Scott Lucas joins us now live from Birmingham for some further analysis. Hi, Scott. Thanks for being with us. Okay, how do you think the White House now will try to present this testimony, Dr. Bright's testimony today, to make it seem less damaging?
They will try to trash Rick Bright, not by challenging the evidence on the record, but by trashing his reputation. Donald Trump already did that on Twitter this morning, disparaging him. Even as Rick Bright is speaking, the White House press secretary, Kayleigh McEnany, has been saying he doesn't have the credentials, that he doesn't know the real story. The Donald Trump tactic, even before coronavirus, whether it was Trump Russia, Trump Ukraine, whether it was on other social matters, is simply to go on the attack and say that whoever is actually raising these points is, quote, a disgruntled employee. And he did that with Rick Bright. But another point needs to be made clear beyond your excellent report, and that is Rick Bright is only one of the officials who has been dismissed by this administration. The health official who reported on shortages in hospitals, senior official, Christy Grimm, was fired last month. The head of the watchdog over spending, the relief package on coronavirus, was removed before he could even begin to act. In other words, politics for Donald Trump trumps, if you'll excuse the pun, the medical advice he's getting, to the extent that in the last 24 hours, he has not just questioned the expertise of Rick Bright, he's questioned the expertise of the White House's top coronavirus expert, Dr. Anthony Fauci.
Right. Tell me, though, Scott, if you think the U.S. can actually deny at this point that it was detrimentally slow to stockpile PPE, to acquire virus samples, build those stocks of remdesivir, for example, as Dr. Bright was saying, which is now seen as one of the more reliable treatments. Is the White House still in a position to say that it did all the things that Dr. Bright is saying it did not?
Oh, you're being such a journalist in trying to present reality. The question here is not whether the White House can say that we stockpiled. We actually did have the protective equipment. We actually did have the test available, because we know it's on the record that Donald Trump denied that coronavirus was serious from January through March. But that's not what happens here. What happens is that Donald Trump and his officials create, quote, an alternative reality. And that is, they will say, in fact, that those who say that they weren't prepared are trying to undermine them, that it's a hoax. They will try to blame others for this crisis, whether it's Democrats, the fake media, China, the World Health Organization. Because ultimately, and I'm sorry to be cynical here, it's not a question of getting to a reality, as Rick Bright is talking about, where you can save lives. For the White House, the priority is protect your president, especially since he's running to get a second term in office in the vote this November.
I wanted to ask you specifically about that. I mean, we are still in the lead up to a presidential election that is supposed to happen in November. President Trump pretty much gets his airtime on a daily basis, while the presumptive nominee really does not. And in spite of whatever failings are alleged in the COVID-19 response, do you think this constant exposure gives Trump an advantage in this would-be campaign period?
He thinks so. That's why he's gotten rid of the White House briefings, because he doesn't want those medical experts up there beside him, like Dr. Fauci or Dr. Deborah Birx. He wants to make these mini rallies. And even if these turn into arguments with reporters, which it often is, even if Trump puts out disinformation, which he often does, the whole spectacle of it is what he hopes can play. In other words, remember, this is not a Trump who depends on getting elected by bringing Americans together, by uniting them, even in a pandemic. It's by grabbing a group of people and turning them against a supposed enemy. And I'm afraid he'll continue to do this. So in other words, we've got two things that clash with each other. In the middle of coronavirus, as your medical experts are saying, everyone should pull together whether or not they're Democrat, Republican, liberal, conservative, because we now have a death toll more than 84,000 in America. But in the world of politics, Trumpian politics, you don't want everybody to pull together. It's us versus them. And as long as Joe Biden is unable to get the stage the way he does, he thinks he can play the media to win this election.
Just very quickly, do you think the election will happen in November?
I don't know. because I don't think Donald Trump wants it to happen. And I think Jared Kushner, his son-in-law and key advisor, has sent up the first key signal when he said earlier this week that he couldn't possibly comment on whether or not the election will proceed. In other words, they're setting up the notion, which is, if there's to be a postal ballot in these extraordinary conditions because of the pandemic, they will say that that is a fraudulent election and therefore it cannot be held.
Scott Lucas, thank you so much, as always, for joining us.